Hello and welcome back. We are doing a big example with multidimensional arrays and file reading. Okay, sorry, I have a little bit of the hiccups right now. So we're going to be writing code that reads and manipulates multidimensional array information from a file, and that's going to be this entire video. So here's my example. We're going to read in and store weather information just like we said we would. We have a bunch of temperature history files that I'll show you in a second, and we're going to read in all this information and store it into a 3D array. Once we have that working, we are going to expand our program to read in multiple years. I have more than one file where I can read in multiple years. We're going to turn it into like a 40 array, and we're going to see how we can sort of do this in a way that maybe isn't going to be quite as confusing for our brains to follow. So this is going to be a really big example. I'm going to strongly recommend that you try out the code yourself first, and then you can watch the rest of this video where you can actually see how all this is going to work. Okay, so I'm just going to straight up close this because it doesn't matter. We're going to come over here and I'll show you what I've uploaded. So far what I've uploaded is this data file, and it's got temperature data for 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. So if we just open one and take a look at what's in it, we can see exactly what's in it. Every single line of the file is set up so that we can see the month/day, a temperature high, and a temperature low. And that's what we have for every single day here. Now we're going to design a system of objects that effectively ends up being a multi-dimensional array, but we're going to put things in objects to make our lives a little bit easier. And we're going to start off by getting all of this stuff in there, like for 1 year, and then we're going to go from there. Okay, let's open up a brand new project. This is going to be big. So we're going to do this in Visual Studio. And then make this bigger. We're going to I'm going to open up a folder because I am going to open up the folder that I have this in right now, which is my 1020 weather example folder. So I'll see it right here on the sidebar where I have so far just like my data files. And I'm going to make a brand new file called main, capital M.java. Oops, public class main. I'm just going to move my meeting controls as usual. And then I can put my main in here and I'll put my, whoops. End of processing message here. A processing message. And we're going to do this. Okay, so whenever I start doing file reading, the very first thing that I want to make sure that I do is just read in the file line by line, and I know that that works. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to make another method, public static void read file. It will take in the file name, and the job of this method is going to be to read in the file. All we're doing is basically showing the data, reading in the data from the files and then presenting it back to the user. So we're not doing anything crazy with the file manipulation. We're just reading stuff in or in an organized fashion and storing it into an organized data structure system. That's all we're really doing here. So to start off, we're going to read file and we're going to read from temperature data 2020.txt. So data, because that's the folder, temperature data 2020.txt. That's what it's called. And that's going to get passed in. Okay. In order to do file reading, we know we need to import some stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and import java.io.star. I'm probably going to use array lists. So I'm also going to import java util.arraylist because I'm pretty sure I'm going to want to use those in a moment. Let's start though with just reading in our file. We can read it in line by line. We can read it in all at once. There's lots of things that we can do. So the things I know I need to do is open the file, read the line. I'll store it in an array list for right now, just because I said I'm going to use one. Read next line. Keep going until done. Print when done. Okay, so that kind of just gives me an outline of the things that I know that I need to do to run this code. So in order to open the file, I'm going to need a try catch. And I'm not really worried at this moment in time about what kind of exceptions might come up. So I'm just going to catch literally any exception that might occur. So we're basically just going to catch any exception. That'll be fixed once we actually have code in here. And then I really am partial to buffered reader. So I will use buffered reader instead of scanner. That is a personal choice of buffered reader, which is okay. And I think I can use file and I can use the file name. What does it say? Nope, can't pass in file. Have to pass in a file reader. Okay, there we go. That's all right. I just couldn't remember. All right, so we've opened our file and then we're going to read a line in. Line is equal to br.readLine. We're going to store it in an array list. So I need to probably have an array list here. Lots of this code is going to move around, but for right now, it's fine. I'm all about iterating on my code. There we go. And then basically we could just say while line does not equal null, lines.add the line, and grab the next one. And then when line is null, we will break out, and then we can print out. I don't know why it defaults to system.error. System.out lines. Okay. Let's just go ahead and make sure that we have our basic file reading stuff up and running the way that we expect it to. Okay, perfect. So it totally worked. So we're reading in each line and you can see that this is a line and then there's a comma, this is a line and then there's a comma, this is a line and there's a comma, etc. So we can see that that actually did indeed work. There's lots of different ways to handle writing this code. And for me, for right now, this is something that I'm okay with. I like it like this. I'm going to get rid of this print because we don't really need a print at this moment. And right here, we can just return the lines array so that we can get it back up into main. Now, in order for this to work, we need to put lines here. And now we'll be able to return it. And we need to have a return type here. And we can just put that like that. So now we'll actually get the file back where each line represents a day of data. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually process that data. Process year data. And we'll pass in this file. Oh, that doesn't say file. Okay, I'm just going to move this out of the way. Right here, we can say public. My fingers are like freezing off here. Public static void process year data. And we are taking in an array list of strings called data. And now we know what each line in here is, right? We know that each line is going to be a string. So we can say for each data line in the data array. Actually, let's make this called the data set because that makes more sense. And then we can say for this is like a data point in the data set. What do we want to do? We need to break up the line, figure out the month and day, store the high and low, put it all together. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to make some objects in order to make this work. Now that we know that we have our strings being read in from the file correctly, we're going to make a bunch of classes that are going to work together to make this code both readable and operational. So the first one we're going to have is we're going to have a class called yearly dataset.java is I think what we're going to go with here, the yearly dataset.java. And inside of here, there is going to be an array of months. Those are going to be the months in the year, right? We know how many months there are in a year. So this is a great place to start. Yearly data set. This dot months is equal to a new month array of size 12 because we have 12 months in the year. And this is going to get upset because month is not a data type. So we're going to go ahead and make month a data type. So we're going to have to add another class. Month.java. Now, depending on what month it is, there is going to be a different there is going to be a different number of days. It's also worth noting that in theory, we could just not have data for one day. And so we should have a way to handle that. And an array list actually won't handle that as well as an array does, because we rely on the array indices to work for us here. So what makes the most sense is for us to do something like a private static int max month days, because we know that no month is going to have more than 31 days. That's the most that any given month could possibly have. And then we could say private static day array days. So that's going to be the days in a month. And we're going to go ahead and do public month. This dot days is equal to a new day array of size max possible number of days. Oops, day max month days. And that will work for us. The other thing we might want to consider doing is also, I don't know why I put static here. Sorry, this one shouldn't be static. We may also want to have something that says like actual num days in the month, right? Actual num days in month. That's kind of a long name, but that's going to be something that we can actually bring in depending on what month it is. And then that may just be something that will help us out. It's possible. I don't know right now if it'll help us, but it feels like something that might help us later. Now, of course, we're still getting an error because days isn't a thing. Day is not a data type. So we're going to have to go ahead and, oops, wrong button. We are going to have to go ahead and make a day.java file as well. Now inside here, we're going to put a private static int high index, because our high is always going to be indexed at 0. And we're going to also make a low index, which is always indexed at 1. And now we can have our double array of temp data for that day of the month for that day. And we can also actually have a private static int num records per day, because although maybe at some other point in time we want to have more than 2, right now we only want to have 2 per day. So here we can go ahead and we can make our constructor where we're going to set the temp data to be equal to a new double array with the number of records that we can have in one day. Perfect. Now, starting at this level, it's probably important for us to be able to set appropriate information. So if I had to guess, when we're reading in a day, for right now, we're going to assume every day does have a high and a low. So there is a high coming in and a low coming in. And if both of those pieces of information are coming in for the temp data for our high index, we can store high. And then for our temp data at our low index, we can go ahead and store the low information that's coming in. And now I'm sure at some point we're going to want to maybe get or set this information for other reasons. But the only other thing for right now that we definitely need at this level is going to be a toString. And I think it makes a lot of sense at this level. Trying to think what else I might want to do to make this nice, but to iterate, we'll iterate on it. So for right now, we'll just do something similar to what we did before. We'll just have a high, which we know is this one. And of course, this doesn't have to be an array. It's only 2 numbers, high and low. This could have just been like a double high and a double low, but I'm making it purposefully a array, because then if I do ever want to be able to add more data, like it's very easy to change this and just add more data. Whereas if I make them variables, like a high variable and a low variable, that becomes just a little bit trickier to do. So we're going to go ahead and put this information in here. Only this one's going to be the low index. And that will be our toString there, which is perfect. So now we can get our high and our low temperatures for a given day. Now, if we go up one level, we have our month, and now this looks a little bit better because now we actually have our days, our maximum number of days, the actual days in a month. We're probably going to need lots of methods that I'm not thinking of right now, and I know that that's going to be the case, but that's okay. For right now, I'm just going to start with getting that toString in there, same as I did for the other one. And this toString will be a string result. And then we're just going to go through every single element from 0 up to the actual number of days in the month. Good thing we made that variable. And just build out our string based off of that information. We're going to do plus equals days at spot I, and then we'll just put it on a new, each day can just be on its own line, I guess. Like that, we'll put it on its own line. And I think it might be nice also to like maybe print the day out. So I think what I'll do is I'll do day, so then whatever day it is, and we'll do like day plus 1. We could do some really nifty stuff to like make this actually print the like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and stuff like that. But for right now, we'll just print like day, like the date, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, the date in the month. So it'll be day 1, day 2, day 3, whatever. And then we're gonna print on a new line the appropriate information that we want for that day. Let's just do it like this. That seems like a thing that will work. And we can return result. Okay, then we can come over to here to our yearly data. Now we're not actually doing anything with this yet. All we need to be able to do is actually we have to do .toString here, since I'm manually building that string out. And then right here, same thing. I know I'm going to need more methods, but for right now, I'm just filling in toStrings everywhere that makes sense. I'm actually going to make a private static final string array of months where we have each month of the year. February, March. Oh, I could do this in so many ways that would be smarter. It's okay. March, April, May, June, July. Oops. July, August, August, September, October, November, December. And I'm just going to put like some of this on its own line. There's 12 months in the year, so if we just do it like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, this will be 6 lines. Oh, they can't both be called month. This should be month strings, month names, I guess we'll call it. So now we have all the names here. Oh, this one I didn't do right. I wanted to have 2 per line. And I just got a little messed up there. Okay, and something else that we could do as well is we could also make, and this doesn't have to be parallel arrays. There is smarter ways to do this. Just deciding if I should. Let's just do it. Let's just make a new. Oh my God, I can't. Am I really going to do this? Am I really going to? No, I'm not. We'll just do it with parallel arrays. Private, static, final, int array, days in month. And we're just going to do the exact same thing. So 30 days has September, April, June, and November. Now I know that February could have 28, could have 29. We don't, there's like a little bit of ambiguity there. And that's okay. We may just have to deal with that later. We may just have to ignore 29. Like we'll have to figure out how we want to handle that later. 30 days has September, April, June, and November. So March, April, May, June. 30 days has September, April, June, May, and November. April, June. 30 days has September, April, May, and November. This shouldn't be this hard. Is there May 31st? There for sure is. April, June, and November. All the rest have 31. This like shouldn't be this hard for me, but apparently it is. Okay, that's okay. Everybody has their strengths. This is not my strength. That is fine. Okay, so now we have the names of the months and the days of the in each of the months, which will really help us when we're like setting up all of our information here. So now in our toString, we can have a string result. And we can actually do for int I is equal to, or I can just do it for each month actually, because that doesn't vary at all. I can just say for each month M in the months, result plus equals, we'll say, oh, I do want to make it with a loop so that I can use the month name variable. I do need that index. Int I is equal to 0, I is less than months dot length, I plus plus. And then right here, I can just say result is going to be month names at I plus, we'll put it on a new line. Pardon me. We'll put the months data. So months at I dot toString. And we'll just see what happens with that. We'll go ahead and we'll say return result. Whoops. Okay, so when a new data set is created, like when we have a new yearly data set and we make this array of months, we have to remember that our month needs to take in the actual number of days in that month. We could also pass in that's maybe what I'll actually do. We'll pass in the name of the month here as well. Right here. Private not static, private string month name. And we'll just pass that information in. String month name. Right here, we'll say this dot month name is equal to month name. And then over here, rather than doing this, we can just do this. And we'll pass in that information as we set up each of the months, which we're going to do right inside here. Because once we've made the array, we can go ahead and set up each of the months. We can say for int I is equal to 0, I is less than months. Whoops. Months dot length, I plus plus. And we can just say this dot months at a given month is going to be equal to a new month. And the information we want to pass in is the month, names at I, whoops, and the days in the month at I. So now we can fill that information in appropriately. Like this, right? We can fill that in. And now, of course, there are things that we could do right here to watch for the 28th. Watch for leap year. We could watch for leap year when I is equal to 1. But at this moment in time, I'm not going to actually worry about it at all. It's fine for right now. The very first year that we're reading in actually is going to be a leap year. 2020 was a leap year. So why don't I set it to 29 and say, watch for not a leap year. That's like super bad programming practices, but not a leap year when I equals 1. 2020 is a leap year. Just leave that in there as a little tidbit of information for myself as to why I'm going to have hard-coded 29 into there. Okay, so then inside our month class now, we can go ahead and we can make a bunch of days. So days are going to take in a high and a low. And right now, those values are, like we don't have those values at this moment in time when we're setting this up just for testing purposes. But that's okay, because what we can do instead is we can just say for each day in our days array, oh no, we're going to run into the same problem as last time. I less than days dot length. I plus plus. And then we can just say days at I is equal to a new day. And we'll just give it two zero values for our start off right there. We have our month name, and then right here, instead of this being like this, we're going to actually just update our toString to pass in the month name. It's good enough. And then we'll just tab that in. Okay, I think we have a really good start to a program here. And the best thing that we could possibly do right now is, yeah, we know we can read this in, and we tested it, and that worked fine. But the other thing we now need to test is our yearly data set. Yearly data set YDS is going to be equal to a new yearly data set. Now, if I look back here, nothing comes into my yearly data set constructor right now. Something will have to eventually, but right now I don't have to worry about it. I can just leave it as it is. And I can go ahead and just print this and see what happens. And I should just get a full year's worth of zeros. But I should at least get that. I shouldn't get any like errors when I try to run this. Who knows? Check that out. It didn't even error out. Good job, us. Okay, let me just go a little bit bigger here. Starting from right here, we can see we have January has 31 days, February has 29 days. And again, we know that we didn't actually put any real data in here yet, but like our structure is correct. We have exactly what we wanted. We could get really fancy with like printing out more days on one line. Like we could easily fit 2 days per line here. And then that might just like not be as long if we wanted to be really fancy. But that sort of takes away from what we're doing right now. Now, this may not actually seem like we're doing multiple arrays. Right now, a lot of this sort of just feels like setting up a basic program and we're going to do some file IO with it. But it's really important to notice what we did because our yearly data set is an array of months and our months is an array of days and our day is an array of temperature data. We actually have a 3D array here that I've abstracted away by using classes. So instead of having yearly temperature data array that's literally like this, double array, yearly temp data equals new double 12, and then I would have to set this later and set this later. This would always be 2, but I can't do that until I know if this is 29 or 30 or 31. Or I could just always set this to 31, and then like if nothing is there, I can ignore it and then set this to 2. But like that line is actually more confusing to follow when it comes to running through your program than having really nicely well-defined classes. So by giving myself these classes, I've set up this 3D array without even fully maybe realizing that that's what it actually is, which is kind of cool. So we are going to process our yearly data set and we'll just pass back the data set so that we can print it up top. We have this process file here, process yearly data set. We can return the yearly data set. And now this whole array list actually is the year's worth of data. And if we really want to be good programmers, we should think about where should we process that data. And the right answer is probably actually not in main at all, now that we're sitting here and thinking about it. We should probably make a new yearly data set. And then on that data set, we should call process year data and pass in that array list. That's how this should be written, like that. And now we can pick this up and move it inside the yearly data set class. This actually is going to make a lot more sense. This becomes void. This becomes not static, and it's going to take in the data set, and the data set already exists in here. And our data set already is set up to have months, which is awesome because we did that up here in yearly data set. So we made our new yearly data set. We're going to go ahead and process our yearly data. By passing in the data set, we're going to break up our line. We know that the line has month, day, high, low. We know that that's how it's split up. So we can go ahead and break all of that up and then find the right spots to put it in. Okay, whoa, sorry. So let's go ahead and break up that line. So let's break up that line into tokens. And we know how to do this. We say data.split, and we're going to split on any number of white spaces. And this should give us, I know how to code. This should give us the first position has month, month, day, day. The next position has high. The next position has low. Now, it would be a good idea here to do some error checking. Like, is there actually 3 elements, right? I should be making sure that the length of the tokens is actually a three elements. Because if it's not 3 elements, then the line is invalid. There's a good chance that something went wrong with that line. I can say else. That line of data is invalid. I am skipping it. Right? So we can do something like that. So there's a good chance here to do at least a little bit of basic error checking. It's your job to be thinking about what kind of error checking you might want to do. Okay. Now, I'm not going to worry about error checking for parsing doubles because I'm just going to assume that those are going to be correct for right now. Just to save myself some sanity, it can be a lot of work to do all those checks, and it can really make our code less legible given the point of what we're trying to do. So I'm going to make a double high, and I'm just going to assume that the high value actually is correct, where I can say tokens at 1, and it's going to be what I expect. And same with my low. I'm just going to assume that tokens at, tokens at 2 actually does exist, and that it is going to be the double that I want it to be, tokens at 2. Now, of course, this is very, very checkable. Over here, I can check and see what things are looking like. Again, you probably wouldn't check every single one, but this gives me at least enough information to get started. So now I can make my high and I can make my low for my data set. I also now need to probably break up my month and my day, knowing that those are going to be ints. So I'm going to make another string array of date tokens here. And I'm going to split up my tokens at 0 on the slash that I'm expecting it to have. Because now I can get the month in integer.parseInt tokens at 0. And I can get the date integer.parseInt tokens at 1. So this gives me the date. This gives me the month. This month is going to come in as like the month that we would know, like January is 1, February is 2, etc. So if I do month index, I can go ahead and just subtract 1 from this. And same thing here, because our array indices have that like off by 1 situation here. So month comes in mapped to actual human data. We need to map it to array indices, right? So that's what we're doing there. And it's the same for the date. Date, same as month. And then this was breaking MMDD up into MM, DD, right? So that's what that was doing. And then this one alone is high, and this one alone is low. So now we actually have so much data here. We have all of our pieces separated out. We figured out our month and our day. We stored our high and low, and now we need to find a way to put it all together. So what are we going to do? Well, what probably makes the most sense is to go into a given month and give it the data it needs to set for a given day. So I can just say this dot months at, and then what month is it? Well, I actually do have a month index variable that I created, and I can say set day data, not a great name, but it's okay. And I can give it the date that it's actually a date index. We did change it. So I can give it the date index, and I can give it the high and the low for that date. Right? We pulled all of that information from this token string, and this outer loop is going to go for every record in the data set. Okay, so now we have to go make this set day data method over in month. So we're going to come over to month, and we can say public void set day data, and we want it to take in a date index. It's not a string. It's not a string. Date index. We have a high and we have a low. Okay, well, we already have our array. We can make sure that the date index actually is less than the actual number of days of the month. We can say if the date index is less than the actual days of the month, it is a valid index. Otherwise, we can say, oh, it doesn't like, the IntelliSense isn't working, but just because this is an error. Not a valid date. But if it is a valid date, what can we do with it? Well, we can actually just throw it directly into our days array. So this dot days at I will get us a day, a specific day. And if you remember what we did with day, we have these two variables, high and low, and we can actually just make a brand new variable for the new record high and low for that day as they have come in from the previous class. This says I, but it should be date index. Brackets are tough. Okay, so now we actually follow it all the way through to setting it all the way down at the date level. We've separated out our code so nicely so that we don't have any crazy lines that say anything like this dot year, month, day, month, day, high equals whatever, right? So rather than having something that looks like that, we've broken it up into lots of objects to allow us to visualize this a little bit better. I'm now realizing I'm using the wrong date tokens here. This one should be using date token and date token. This was highlighted in a different color telling me that like I wasn't using it. So that's how I knew. And I don't have any current errors, which is really nice as well. So I can go ahead and try and run it and see what happens. And what I actually end up with, which is pretty exciting if we're being honest, is fully functioning code for my 3D array. That's everything, 3D array. It's all there, which is pretty darn awesome if I do say so myself. So this is all for 2020. So what we can actually do at this point in time is, oh, I never closed my buffered reader. Buffered reader dot close. Just gonna make sure we flush that out. Oops. Okay. So what we can do now is we can actually update our yearly data so that the toString for our yearly data tells us what year it is. And we'll print that out as well. Now, we don't want to just hard code 2020 in. That's a really bad idea because very soon we're going to have 4 different years and maybe we want to extend this program to even more. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to add another variable here. It can be an int. That can be a string. Cur year. I don't know why I said cur. It can probably just be called year. And now when we do our yearly data set, we can actually just pass in that year. This dot year is going to be equal to year. And then right here, we can just start this off by saying year data set. And then we can start off our program. So if we go here to run our code, we'll see if we look like on the side menu here, like you'll notice that this is red and it's red because that means there's an error in this code. Without even running it, I can see that there's an error right here. So I'm going to come right in here and it's just because of course I no longer have a default constructor. I have to actually put something in here. Now I know for a fact that all my files have the same name structure. All that changes is the year. So I'm actually going to make a variable starting year. No, I'm going to do this even smarter. Final int first year data is going to be 2020 for right now. So in here, I can put first year data. And I can then now pass first year data into here. Now, for my current program, I can say that my last year data that I have available anyway is going to be 2023. Right, so now when I'm running this code, no problem. This is going to work really well. Okay, so this is actually already going to be an int. So this is upset. I decided to make this a string, but now I can realize an int was probably a better idea. It's not really a big deal. So there we go. We can fix that up and that automatically resolves this issue as well. So for right now, if I run this code, we are going to get exactly what we expect with our nice new header. We just scroll back up here, right here, where it says 2020 data set, and then it like has all of the information after. And now what we want to do is we want to take this one step further and have multiple years. And so just for ease, I'm just going to put it right at this top level. I am going to go ahead and right here, make a brand new yearly data set array of multiple years. And the size of this array, this should say data with only one A. The size of this array should be the last year of data minus the first year of data plus one. Because that will give us the 4 years of data that I have. 2023 minus 2020 gives me 3 plus 1 will give me 24. And that should always be correct. Now, something that we're probably going to want to do when we do our file reading and stuff is just a to-do. We'll do it like this. Make sure the file exists. So we're going to talk about how to do that in just a minute. But marking it as a to-do means that like Java will actually recognize that that's a thing, which is kind of cool. Anyway, so now we have our multiple years. What can we do? Well, we're going to do all of this for every single year. So we can just wrap all this in a loop. We can just say when we start at the first year of data, and while I is less than or equal, I guess it's less than or equal. If I just make this 2024 exclusive, this side is going to be exclusive. So I'm just going to include that word just so that I don't forget. I can do it like this. And instead of just saying I'll say cur year. Just because I doesn't mean anything, but cur year does. And we're starting with the first year and we're going to go up every single year. And we're going to run all this code for every single year. Only now, instead of this saying first year data, this is going to say cur year. So we're going to be doing it for every single year. And now our yearly data set right here, rather than trying to think how I want to do this. Int yearly index starts at 0. All we're going to do, this really should be its own data object, but whatever, it's okay for right now. We're going to go ahead and allow the processing of the year to happen. We're going to take this system.out.println out, and we're going to replace it with the multiple years at our yearly index equaling the yearly data set, and then yearly index plus plus. And then at the end of our program, so all the way over here, we can say for each, we can actually make a separate method because we're really good programmers, print data sets, and we'll pass in all of the data sets right there. And then we can make a method in here, public static void yearly data set sets. And we can just say for each data set, data in sets, print it out. That should actually print out each of those pieces of information that we just accumulated in this process over here. So now when we run this file, it's going to be super long. Hold on. Go back up to, actually, this will just be a lot easier if I just completely close it and then restart. Because now I can just go all the way up to the top of all of this. Oh, it's too long. It doesn't even all fit in here. I have to do something smarter to actually see it all. Okay, let's get smarter so that we can see it all. Let's get smarter. That's okay. We are going to do this so that the way that our months print is we're actually going to get 3 days worth of data on every line, as opposed to right now where it's every like daily data is on its own line. So this is going to get rid of this right here. We don't want it to do this every single time. Instead, we're going to do a really neat little trick. We're going to say if I mod 3, so this should add, like, instead of a new line, this should probably add a couple more tabs. And then if 3 lines have happened, we're going to want to add a new line. So it's a really nifty way to figure out how many pieces of data we want to put on each line. Okay, so my spacing is pretty wide, which is okay, but I'm gonna fix this even further to try and avoid these issues. So I'm gonna do this. I want to keep that brought in, but this is only gonna have one tab. And then I'm also going to just update my settings in Visual Studio Code really quickly to change the font size for the terminal. How do I do that again? Font size? Font editor, font size, editor, terminal. And we're just gonna make it like smaller. Just so that we can like see all of this data and we don't have to worry about this weird whatever. So now here's hoping this looks much, much better. Looks like I've got a small error in my code that's making some of the months not line up properly. So I'm gonna fix that too. Let me just see, where is that error? After 29/30. So after the last day of the month. After the last day of the month. Oh, we definitely need to include a new line at the end of the month, no matter what day we end on, whether or not it was a multiple of 3 or not. At the very end, we definitely still need to add that line. There we go. If it's a multiple of 3, it gets even funnier, but that's okay. At least now we can see all of our data. Okay, so that was a super long-winded way of being able to see all of our data, but that's okay. Here's our 2020 data set. Here's January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Here's our 2021 data set. Here's our 2022 data set, and here is our 2023 data set. And we've read it all in and we've organized it all beautifully. And this was absolutely a 4D array, except we're hiding it through different classes. Now, the only place where I didn't make a class yet, but I probably should have, was this should have become like a multi-year list of like these 2 variables. Actually, these 4 variables all should have been stored in another layer. And so just what time? Since I have some time, I'm going to add that in right now. So I need a list of yearly data sets. So I'm actually going to make a class called list yearly data .java. And it's really easy to make this class because we've already written all the code. We just have to pick it up and move it. Like we literally just need to pick all of this up and move it. Like this. All of this becomes well, not quite that simple, but close to that simple. These should be private now. Not quite that simple. Only, right? Okay, so we do that. Those are private. This also will become private. Like this. And this will become private. Like this. And then we can have a public list of yearly data. And then that's where we'll actually initialize the variable, like this dot multiple years is going to be equal to this, and this dot yearly index is going to be 0. This here is all processing a year's worth of data. So let's go ahead and make that into a method. Public void process what's the best way to do this? I want to be so smart about this. Like, I just want to be so smart. So I think what I want to do is all of this no longer makes sense in there. It's a list of years. Just trying to see if there's anything I should pass in from main, but I don't think so. I think I'll just call it process years. And I'll just do this. I'll have a current year, I'll read that information in. I'll read the file in inside here too as well, which means I can go ahead and I can pick up my read file method. It doesn't have to live in main anymore. It can come and live over here. And when it lives over here, a couple things have to change. For one, it's no longer static. And for another, it could be private because only the list yearly data class should have access to it. So that's a pretty good solution. All of this is just not indented properly. There we go. So that now we'll go ahead and read it all in. This does all of its file IO. We use my array list in here and my buffered reader in here now. So I don't actually need these up here. I need these in here. Oh, look, it did it for me. It auto imported those. So that's great. All of this can leave. None of that needs to be in there anymore. I'm going to make up my yearly, what did I call it? List yearly data, all data is equal to new list yearly data, whatever. And now this can say list yearly data, all data. And now this is print data sets. That doesn't actually make a whole lot of sense anymore to do it this way. So instead we're going to do it like this. And then this becomes a toString. We move it all out of main and our main becomes super tiny and we've redistributed our code throughout our program. So this becomes public string toString. And then we can say for each, what was it called here? Yearly data set array multiple years. So for each year in the multiple years, rather than printing it out, we're just going to make a string result variable, just like before. Instead of printing it, we say result plus equals the year toString. And before we had it as a print line, so we should add a \n so that we don't lose the formatting that we had before. And we just return result. And then once all of our code has been moved into the places where we want it, we can go ahead and try and run it again and just see what's happening. Can't invoke yearly data set because year is null. Okay, we're just going to go back and check this out here. This is null for some reason. Multiple years, process years. Whoops. This is process years. Oh, are we not calling process years anywhere? We're not calling process years. So we have two choices here. We can either call process years here. So we can say all data dot process years, or because we're not actually giving any information from main, there's really no reason to call this from main. Instead, we could just turn this into a private method and just do it from right here. Fill it right in here. If I was bringing something in from main, then yeah, okay, maybe I would need to have it public and call on it as an instance method from main. But here I don't have to. Here I can just say this dot process years. You don't need this, but this instance is process years, and it will go ahead and it will run through all the information that I already have available to me within this class. So now when I go ahead and I run this, nothing should have changed. That's the key. So I did a lot of moving of code around, but the key is that even though I moved a lot of code around, nothing here actually changed. Now, it is worth noting that Februaries that don't actually have a 29th day, just say 0 right now. So that's not actually super helpful. We don't want to print that day if it's not a leap year. I forget what the rules are if something is a leap year, but that's something that we can really quickly Google and then we'll know and then we can fix it. How to tell if a year is a leap year. Do we just have to divide it by 4? That's all it is? Okay, I wasn't sure if there's more rules like the way a prime number is. So that's simple enough. So then we can go back into where we actually set that piece of information, which is right over here in our not in month, in here, where we have this 29, but we don't know for sure that this is going to be correct. There's lots of different ways to handle this, but the simplest way at this point in our program is just to say if I is equal to 1, meaning it's February, and the year that came in, mod 4, the year mod 4, we're going to put this back to 28 because 28 is like the standard. And then if the year mod 4 is 0, then we're basically saying if it's February, and it's a leap year, right? If those two things are true, we need to change this days and month. We can't pass in 28. So what we'll do is we'll make an int num days variable that by default is going to be days and month. But in this one situation here, let's just add one more private static final int leap year Feb days, which will be 29. And so then in this one scenario, we'll say num days is going to be equal to leap year Feb. There we go. And so now we won't get those extra days on the months that like they should just, or on the years where they just shouldn't be there. So like even if we just look here, now we'll see this actually stops at 28, which is what it should have been doing all along. Yeah, I'm just looking. This is super interesting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, etc. Yeah, for some reason, 1 is on its own line. Obviously, my formatting is slightly off, but I also don't care because I think it looks great and I'm pretty excited about it. So I'm not going to worry about it. But we can see now that where is it? In 2020, so in our first year, when it actually was indeed a leap year, we still get 29 with the data that should exist for that day. And then when we look at subsequent years, we don't get a 29th day. Now, again, there's way more error checking that we potentially would want to do around our code, maybe different formatting. Maybe we want to now with this information, do things like determine the coldest January across all years, or the hottest August across all years, or whatever it might be. But now all of our data is in our system in a really nicely organized way. And it's using multidimensional arrays. It just doesn't feel like it to us right now. Now, something I'm going to sort of task all of you with, should you choose to do it, is I think that you should sit down and draw out this system. So draw out all of the variables with their arrows showing exactly where the references are going so that you can have a really clear understanding. Now, of course, I'm not expecting you to draw like 4,000 boxes for every single spot in the array. Like that would be crazy, but I certainly would sit down and draw out a solid piece of it, given every object is pointing to so much data. It's a really good idea to get a solid understanding of how all of these objects are connecting to each other. So this is a pretty big program that you saw me put together in a pretty small amount of time. But we can do this with anything. This data that I pulled, these 4 data sets, I actually got them from ChatGPT. So they're not real data sets, although you can find data sets online. I just asked ChatGPT to generate random ones for me. Point being, it's really easy to make your own programs to practice stuff like this, especially when ChatGPT can give us our text files to practice with. So yeah, so this is sort of a really big example of using multidimensional arrays and how we can sort of abstract away some of those complexities to give ourselves a really nice and cohesive system of like interworking objects. Okay, that's all I have for multidimensional arrays. Practice lots. And as always, if there are any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks, everyone.